Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into a really significant topic, plane crashes.
Right.
And our goal isn't just listing incidents. We want to unpack the why and how safety in aviation really evolves after things go wrong. We've looked at the sources to give you a clearer understanding.
Exactly. Our mission today is to pull out the key insights.
Yeah.
What causes these events? What can we learn from specific crashes? And crucially, how do safety and response systems actually improve afterwards? You should leave feeling, well, pretty well informed.
Okay, so let's start with the why. The sources make it clear pretty quickly that it's rarely simple. You might think of one big mechanical failure, maybe.
Yeah, that's the common idea.
But the reality is it's almost always a combination of things, right? A chain of
But,
events. What kind of factors are we talking about?
well, it's surprisingly broad. The main areas, based on the sources, are things like human error, could be a pilot mistake, maybe miscommunication, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Then you've got technical failures, engine problems, issues with the plane systems, and of course the environment.
Hmm.
Things severe weather, like really heavy rain, or bad visibility, fog,
Right, the obvious ones. But the sources mention other things too, maybe less common ones.
definitely. Things like runway incidents get highlighted, planes overshooting the runway or skidding, maybe because it's wet or they're going too fast.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
even external stuff, bird strikes, believe it or not, or debris on the runway causing damage. It's a whole mix of potential issues.
So these categories really come to life when you look at actual events. Which incidents from our sources kind of illustrate these different factors?
Well, the really clear example is Air India Express Flight 1344. That was in 2020 at Cozy Code.
I remember that one.
Yeah. It crashed during landing in heavy rain. 21 people tragically died. It really underscores how tricky landing can be, especially in bad weather.
And then there are completely different types of causes. The sources bring up the Air India Flight 182 bombing back in 1985.
A terrible event. 329 killed.
Shows a totally different vulnerability, external threats, and the Charkhi-Dadri mid-air collision in 96.
One of the deadliest ever, 349 fatalities. That points to the immense complexity of managing air traffic, especially in crowded skies.
Yeah.
And going back to the runway issue you mentioned, the Mangalore crash in 2010, Air India Express Flight 812 overshot the runway.
How many fatalities was that?
158.
Yeah.
Another stark example of runway safety challenges. So yeah, different causes, but each incident adds to the overall picture of risk.
What really strikes me, though, is how the industry responds. It seems counterintuitive, maybe, that safety improves because of these terrible events.
It does seem that way,
Mhm.
but it's absolutely central to aviation safety. The learning process is rigorous.
So how does that work? How do they learn?
Investigations are the key. In India, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, the DGCA, leads these exhaustive investigations, and the critical tool is the black box.
Which isn't actually black, right?
No, it's bright orange, thankfully. Easier to find. It records flight data speed, altitude, engine parameters, and cockpit conversations. It's indispensable.
And that analysis leads to real changes.
Absolutely. Things like improved pilot training, making sure crews know how to handle emergencies, and much stricter maintenance rules for aircraft. It's a constant feedback loop. Learn, adapt, improve.
Okay, so that's the investigation and prevention side. What about the immediate aftermath? The response?
There's a whole framework for that, too. Local emergency teams, often the NDRF, India's National Disaster Response Force, get involved quickly. Hospitals are put on alert, and importantly, there's support for the families, both psychological and financial.
So these incidents have a lasting impact then. They actually drive change.
Oh, definitely. Significant changes. You see stricter safety regulations coming into force after major accidents. Remember the Mangalore crash?
Yeah, the runway overshoot.
That incident, and others like it, pushed for real upgrades to airport infrastructure. Things like longer runways or special safety areas at the ends, particularly at tricky airports. Plus, there's a constant push for better communication systems and real-time weather updates for pilots.
It really paints a picture of safety as not a destination, but a continuous journey, always learning.
That's exactly it. It's an ongoing process, adapting constantly based on every single event, learning lessons to make the next flight safer.
Okay, so summing up our deep dive then.
Well, we've touched on the diverse causes, looked at some specific impactful incidents, and then unpacked how the system learns through investigation, new regulations, better training, infrastructure upgrades, and response protocols. It's all about building resilience.
A really powerful example of learning from failure, actually. So a final thought for you, our listener, to consider. What other complex systems in our world, maybe healthcare, maybe finance, maybe something else entirely, could benefit from this kind of rigorous systematic learning from incidents that we